Hi, I'm James. I'm back with Cheryl. How are you, Cheryl?
Good, James.
Little episode of getting closure for your business and you. Cheryl, last time we talked about all the different sorts of jobs people do that you might encounter if your business is in a bit of trouble or you need to get things sorted out. So, bankruptcy. What's a bankruptcy trustee do?
So I think we may have discussed this in one of our other podcasts, but bankruptcy relates to personal. So bankruptcy may arise as a result of the liquidation of your company, but bankruptcy relates to personal debt, personal credit card debt, personal guarantees, money that you owe personally.
And as I understand, that's different from what you see on TV from the US where like bankruptcies.
Companies go into bankruptcy. Yeah.
Whereas here they would go into liquidation, which we can cover next time. So bankruptcy is just myself, like I've got too much personal debt.
That's right. And as I said, that may be as a result of your company going into liquidation. You may now have half a dozen of your creditors pursuing you for personal guarantees. So
like you've got a photocopier or you've bought a ute or something like that and they've got some fine print down the back. And we've talked about personal guarantees before. Your signs and you've got to not only be careful about signing them, but if you are going to sign them, you've got to make sure you keep a track of them because you don't want these people coming out of the woodwork if something goes sour. So bankruptcy, as you would topically see in your day, is not so much people have got credit cards and stuff like that. It's
credit cards, it can be any personal debt that is too large for them to be able to pay. And now look, what's too large? Someone might have $1 million debt and be able to pay it because they've got property that they can sell to pay $1 million debt.
Yeah.
I often work with people who maybe have a $20,000 or $30,000 debt. And sometimes I think to myself, really, are we really going to put this person into bankruptcy for a $20,000 or $30,000 debt? But you think about it, if they're on the dole, if they're getting Centrelink, if they're on a pension, if they're a single mum with 3 or 4 kids, a single parent, $20,000 or $30,000 can be just totally
just the mountain's the same depending on from which perspective.
That's right.
There are things like Part 9 and Part 10 arrangements, and I think we've sort of delved into those a little bit before. That's probably, if you need to think about that sort of stuff, that is a talk to certainly a Part 10. They're all part of the bankruptcy scheme. You can go to the Australian Financial Security Authority. They have a bunch of trustees who you can go and fill out the paperwork for, can't
They
you?
do. And certainly AFSA is the name of the government organisation. It provides a great service for somebody who is in dire straits and who can't afford assistance. I'd still suggest that people speak to somebody before they necessarily go to the free government trustee. Sometimes, there will be people who are in dire straits, but they may have a property. They may have some assets that actually would be sold, would be realised by a bankruptcy trustee if they went bankrupt. And so it may be that it would be better off for those people to actually talk to what we call a private bankruptcy trustee. That's somebody that you would have a meeting with and you would be able to negotiate with them maybe to pay for the equity in the property. Maybe a family member would buy the equity in the house. But the bankruptcy trustee is an accountant who's got a qualification that allows them to call themselves a bankruptcy trustee. There's lots of study involved, and they will totally look after the personal insolvency side of things. They will assess your income. They will assess your assets. They will decide if there's any opportunity for those assets to be sold to realise money for creditors. So once again, bankruptcy trustee, personal, but I think it's still good to speak to somebody first, whether that's your accountant, your lawyer, a director's advocate, to make sure that you are using the right bankruptcy trustee before you file for bankruptcy.
So I think it's one of those things about getting advice from the right source. It's understanding if you've got a bit of complexity to your personal affairs, then the free service may not necessarily be the right one for you if you've got a fair bit going on or you've come into this situation where a business might have failed and you've got some personal assets that are in the mix. So now, Cheryl, we're going to cover off, you've got a new podcast series coming up where you're going to talk to some of the people who you've helped. You'll be talking to people who share their story in a bit more detail. So we'll watch out for those and we'll certainly give those a plug as we go along. Thanks for listening. A reminder that these podcasts are general in nature and do not constitute advice, and they don't take into account your personal circumstances. So if you think, though, that some of the issues raised might apply to you, you should seek qualified financial, legal or counselling advice.